Welcome to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the vast expanse of human experience and uncover the intricate tapestry of our collective past. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through one of the most pivotal events in modern history, the Russian Revolution. This tumultuous period, which spanned several years, would forever alter the course of Russian society and send shockwaves throughout the world. The Romanov dynasty, which had ruled Russia for over 3 centuries, was facing growing discontent among its subjects. The seeds of revolution were being sown, nurtured by the fertile soil of intellectual ferment, and watered by the blood of martyrs. In the 1860s, Tsar Alexander II had implemented a series of reforms aimed at modernizing Russia's economy and society. However, these efforts were ultimately undermined by the Tsar's own conservatism and the entrenched interests of the nobility. The emancipation of serfs in 1861, while a significant step forward, did little to alleviate the suffering of the peasantry, who continued to toil in poverty, their lives bound to the land. As the years passed, a growing chorus of dissenting voices began to echo through Russia's cities and towns. Radical intellectuals, such as Nikolai Chernyshevsky and Sergei Nikayev, were inspiring a new generation of revolutionaries who saw the overthrow of the Romanovs as the only path to true social change. The writings of Karl Marx, which had begun to circulate in Russia, further fueled the flames of discontent as many began to see the struggle for socialism as an integral part of their own national liberation. One figure, in particular, would play a crucial role in shaping the course of events: Vladimir Lenin. Born in 1870, Lenin was a brilliant and uncompromising revolutionary who had lost his brother to the Tsar's executioners. This personal tragedy would fuel his unwavering dedication to the cause of revolution and drive him to become one of the most influential figures of the 20th century. As we move into the early 20th century, Russia was on the brink of a perfect storm. The economy was in shambles. The war with Japan had ended in disastrous defeat, and the people were growing increasingly restless. In 1905, a wave of protests and strikes swept through Russia as workers, peasants, and intellectuals demanded reform and an end to the autocracy. The Tsar, Nicholas II, was forced to grant concessions, including the establishment of a parliament known as the Duma. As the years passed, the tensions between the Tsarist government and the burgeoning revolutionary movement continued to escalate. The Duma, established in 1905, proved to be a mere facade of democracy, as the Tsar retained the power to dissolve it at will. In 1914, Russia's entry into World War I would prove to be a catastrophic mistake, as the country's military was ill-prepared for the conflict, and the war effort would place an unbearable strain on the economy. The war years saw widespread discontent and disillusionment among the Russian people as food shortages, inflation, and military defeats became commonplace. In February 1917, a wave of strikes and protests swept through Petrograd as workers, soldiers, and sailors demanded bread, peace, and an end to the autocracy. The Tsar, Nicholas II, was forced to abdicate on March 15, 1917, marking the end of the Romanov dynasty. A provisional government, led by Alexander Kerensky, was established, but it proved to be ineffective in addressing the country's deep-seated problems. Meanwhile, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, who had returned to Russia from exile in April 1917, were gaining popularity among the working class and the soldiers. Lenin's slogan of peace, bread, and land resonated deeply with the masses who were tired of the war and the economic hardship. On October 25, 1917, the Bolsheviks launched a successful revolution, as a coalition of workers, soldiers, and sailors stormed key government buildings and institutions in Petrograd. The Winter Palace, the seat of the provisional government, was seized, and Kerensky was forced to flee. Lenin, who had been in hiding, emerged as the leader of the new government, proclaiming the establishment of the world's first socialist state. The early days of the Soviet regime were marked by chaos and violence as the Bolsheviks struggled to consolidate power and establish a new order. The Cheka, a secret police force established by Lenin, was tasked with rooting out opposition and crushing dissent. In July 1918, the Tsar and his family were brutally murdered in Yekaterinburg, marking the end of the Romanov dynasty. As the Soviet government began to take shape, Lenin implemented a series of radical policies, including the nationalization of industry, the redistribution of land, and the establishment of a planned economy. The Bolsheviks also introduced a new calendar, abandoning the traditional Julian calendar in favor of the Gregorian calendar used in the West. In 1918, the Soviet government faced its first major challenge as a coalition of anti-Bolshevik forces, including Tsarist loyalists, liberals, and socialists, launched a civil war against the new regime. The Red Army, led by Leon Trotsky, was established to defend the Soviet state, and it would go on to play a crucial role in the eventual victory of the Bolsheviks. The Civil War raged on for several years, with the Red Army facing off against a diverse array of enemies, including the White Armies, the Czech Legion, and the Allied interventionist forces. In 1920, the Soviet government introduced the new economic policy, which allowed for limited private enterprise and market mechanisms in an effort to revive the war-torn economy. As the new economic policy took hold, the Soviet economy began to recover from the devastation of the Civil War. The introduction of limited private enterprise and market mechanisms allowed for a degree of flexibility and innovation, which helped to stimulate growth and development. However, this policy also created new challenges, as it led to the emergence of a new class of wealthy entrepreneurs and businessmen who were seen as a threat to the socialist ideals of the revolution. In 1922, the Soviet government faced another major challenge, as Vladimir Lenin suffered a stroke which left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak. This led to a power struggle within the Communist Party, as different factions vied for control. Eventually, Joseph Stalin emerged as the dominant figure, and he would go on to shape the course of Soviet history for the next 3 decades. Under Stalin's leadership, the Soviet Union underwent rapid industrialization and modernization, as the government invested heavily in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. However, this progress came at a terrible cost, as Stalin's regime was marked by widespread repression, censorship, and violence. The forced collectivization of agriculture led to famine and devastation in the countryside, while the purges of the 1930s resulted in the execution or imprisonment of millions of people. Despite these atrocities, the Soviet Union played a crucial role in the defeat of Nazi Germany during World War II, as the Red Army bore the brunt of the fighting on the Eastern Front. The Soviet Union suffered heavily, with an estimated 27 million casualties, but its contribution to the Allied victory was instrumental. In the years following Stalin's death in 1953, the Soviet Union underwent a period of gradual reform and liberalization, as leaders such as Nikita Khrushchev and Mikhail Gorbachev attempted to address the legacy of Stalinism and introduce greater transparency and accountability. However, these efforts ultimately proved unsuccessful, as the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, marking the end of the communist experiment. Today, the Russian Revolution is remembered as a complex and multifaceted event, which had far-reaching consequences for Russia and the world. As the historian Erich Hobsbawm once said, "The Russian Revolution was the most important event of the 20th century, not because it was a model for other revolutions, but because it marked the end of one era and the beginning of another." The revolution's legacy can be seen in the rise of socialist and communist movements around the world, as well as in the ongoing struggle for social justice and human rights. The Russian Revolution also serves as a reminder of the dangers of authoritarianism and the importance of protecting individual freedoms and democratic institutions. As the Russian writer and dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn once said, "The line between good and evil is not a fixed boundary, but a frontier that runs through the heart of every human being." The Russian Revolution was a testament to this fundamental truth, as it revealed both the best and worst aspects of human nature. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that, to understand the present, we must first understand the past.